Good afternoon, teachers.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
Po.
Okay. So let us have our system check first, teachers. Can you see the screen I am sharing right now? Can you see the two hands praying in the camera? Can you give me?
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. How about my audio? Is it clear? Or do I have, background noise? Okay. Thank you. So how about you? How are you today? Can you leave a word in a chat? Like, how are you feeling today? Are you affected by the typhoon? Or,
Oo, anak. Do'n muna kayo muna.
yes,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, ma'am, because I'm outside of our house.
you shouldn't go outside. What do you mean you're out? You shouldn't go out.
I'm connecting to PC Wi-Fi, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
I don't have enough load, ma'am, right now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can someone lead us in prayer? How about Sir Rodel? Would you like to lead us in prayer? Thank you. You may unmute, sir, and lead us in quick prayer. Are you there, Sir Rodel? I think it's his connection. How about Ma'am Cassandra? Thank you. Would you like to lead the prayer? Ma'am Cassandra? Okay. How about Sir Joshua? Please lead us in prayer. I think you have better connection. Sir Joshua?
Ako po ba?
Yes, please lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Malinaw po ba yung...
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sige po.
Okay, let's pray.
Let's bow our head and close our eyes and feel the presence of the Lord. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah, Father. We praise you, we honor you, we give you praise. Panginoon, maraming salamat sa araw na to, Lord God, na ipinagkaloob mo sa bawat isa sa amin upang maka-attend sa klase namin ngayon online. Panginoon, I pray for our connections, Panginoon, na maging smooth, Panginoon, yung discussions mga ituturo ni Ma'am, and open our minds and hearts, Panginoon, to understand kung ano man yung mga knowledge na ibibigay sa amin ng teacher namin. And Lord, pinag-pray ko rin po ang teacher namin, Panginoon, na bigyan mo siya ng wisdom and knowledge na maging maganda rin yung mga ibibigay niya sa amin. Panginoon, kayo na bahala sa klase namin ngayon. Sa iyo namin pinagkakatiwala ang lahat sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That's a wonderful prayer, Sir Joshua. Thank you so much. So now let's have our screenshot, our class picture before the class. For the meantime, for a while, please turn on your videos for the sake of the screenshot, and understand that you need to turn off your video later, right, to maintain your internet connection. Okay. Please turn on. Ready? I will count in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Smile. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, we are 25 in the room. Am I right? Okay, 25. So again, you may now turn off your video if you like, but if you have, Wi-Fi connection and you think that your internet connection is fast and can really sustain, right? Please just stay there with your video on. Thank you. Again, good day, teachers. So before we jump into another topic, of course, we need to have our echoing of the output. I hope, right, you received my PS there, my notes in the invitation link that I sent. Oops, sorry. Who's the admin PC? Okay, I need to. Okay, I even told you to prepare, right? To prepare to echo your output. Okay. If you are admin PC, please rename. I will need to rename your user ID. Thank you. Okay. So let's start with the first one. I hope you have the copy. I also have the copy of your responses, so don't worry. I can also echo your responses to you. So, what's the rough length of books in your chosen genre? Anyone who'd like to share the rough length of books in your chosen genre? So, as early as last week, right, or 2 weeks ago, I hope and assume, right, that you're able to at least you have decided, right, about your chosen genre because that's the first thing, right, that you need to look at. So, it will be a smooth flow at least. That's the beginning as a guidance for you to continue writing. Okay. Anyone would like to share? Ma'am Jennifer, would you like to share your response there?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I read for a short story entitled The Fall of the House of the Usher,
Mm-hmm.
it only has 12 pages and has approximately 11,000 to 15,000 words po. That's
Okay.
my answer.
The words, huh? Okay. But maybe you're referring to a novel, right? So our very goal, at least, right, at the very least, our very goal is for all of you to be able to write a short story, at least, right? A short story. Of course, not a novel, right? In the whole semester that's long, okay? But maybe in the future, right, you may continue it, right, as a novel. But for this semester, right, we hope, right, that you're able to come up with a short story. Okay? So that's a lot of words, right? Okay, thank you, Ma'am Jennifer. How about Ma'am Maurice? Your chosen genre and what's the rough length of the books?
Thank you so much.
Sorry, you have loud music there. I don't know if that's from your neighbor. So maybe you can type your answer. I'm sorry. Okay. We couldn't understand each other. But can you hear me clearly even though you have music there? Ah, because of the earphones. Thank you. How about okay, let me read from one of your classmates' response. He said, okay, psychological drama, or she, psychological drama, thriller, or horror in science fiction. Genres often involve lengthy narrations and dialogues, as well as extensive information on the surrounding where sequences of events happen. Yeah, especially if it's a thriller. Right? Conclusively, these genres might run up to 100,000 to 115,000 words. However, okay, there are times where these descriptive genres are present in short stories. Short stories are described by most as a work of prose fiction that can be read in one sitting. Roughly, the average length of short stories ranges from 1,000 to 20,000 words. Okay, so do not be overwhelmed by the number of words. Okay, we will guide you, right? We will help one another as we go along. Okay. Another next question. Do they tend to be written from a first person or third person point of view? And do they contain one or several points of view? Cite evidences. You'd like to share their output? How about Ma'am Chrisline? Are you there?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon. Yeah. Would you like to share your response to this second question?
Uh, the book that I've chosen, ma'am, is composed of a lot of stories. Like it includes 1,000 different stories. So
Oh.
there are stories that has first person
Mm-hmm.
point of view and third person point of view. This is the book, ma'am.
Okay. Oh. Oh, it's an anthology. Is it anthology? Collection of short stories. I think. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Ah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, let me read Ma'am Ray's answer in the chat. I choose a story entitled More Than Meets the Eye. Okay, it has 9 chapters with 75 pages. Oh, really? Oh, 75 pages each chapter or in total? Okay. So, Ma'am Francesca, how about a book of mixed poems and short stories and haikus? Ma'am? We will go to poetry as well. No worry. Okay. So, how about, allow me to read again from your classmate? Some do, some are not, and some are mixtures of point of views. One example of the first person point of view is Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. From the unnamed narrator, I should fail in any attempt to convey an idea of the exact character of the studies or of the occupations in which he enfolded me. Okay? I would in vain endeavor to educe more than a small portion which should lie within the compass of merely written words. Or I lack words to express the full extent or the earnest abandon of his persuasion. So as you notice, the evidences show first person point of view with the pronoun I. On the other hand, Richard Matheson's I Am Legend is written in a third person point of view or limited point of view. Okay, Neville bent over and picked up a little soil in his right hand. He ran it between his fingers, crumbling the dark clumps into grit. How many of them, he wondered, slept in the soil as the story went? He shook his head. Precious few. Where did the legend fit in then? Okay, that's so cool. Okay, with evidences, correct. How about the third question? Okay, are they primarily plot driven with lots of action or character driven with lots of internal reflection? Anyone who'd like to echo their response here? Ma'am Ingrid, are you there?
Hello? Yes, I'm here. So my response for this one is I chose a Haruki Murakami book. And usually when you read Murakami, the characters there are character driven with lots of internal reflection.
Mhm.
So here's one passage. Um, Memory is a funny thing. When I was in the scene, I hardly paid it in any mind. I never stopped to think of it as something that would make a lasting impression.
Mhm.
Certainly never imagined that 18 years later I would recall it in such detail. I didn't give a damn about the scenery that day. I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about the beautiful girl walking next to me. I was thinking about the two of us together and then about myself again. It was the age, the time of life when every sight, every feeling, every thought came back like a boomerang to me. And worse, I was in love, love with complications. Scenery was the last thing on my mind.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
Toru Watanabe from Norwegian Wood
Mhm.
by Murakami. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. It's so obvious, right? It even creates an imagery in our mind, right? It's really obvious that it's character driven, and because that's definitely an internal reflection of the character. Thank you, ma'am Ingrid. How about ma'am April? So I assume since you've chosen, right, your genre and prospect at least, books that can guide you, of course, or that can inspire you. I hope you will also, right, use the same, right? Like if it's primarily plot driven or character driven. Ma'am April, what's your
Yes, ma'am.
uh,
Um,
your prospect genre?
to be honest, I haven't chosen yet whether to which I should focus
Mhm.
because it depends on the progress of the book I am going to write. If I'm going to focus it on the plot driven or the character driven,
Mhm.
because that's why I couldn't able to say it as of now.
Mhm.
I need to know the very purpose why I am writing it
Okay. Yeah,
first.
yeah, and the question just asks the prime if it's primarily plot driven or character. So it's possible, ma'am, that we have two, right? You have those
Yes, ma'am.
say the action, more on the action, and with a combination of internal reflection. That's possible, right? However, most of the time there's highlight, right? There's one that's highlighted. That's why we use the term primarily. Okay, thank you, Ma'am
Yes,
April.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at least slowly you are, you know, choosing. Okay, between the two. Is the language simple and direct with relatively short sentences and paragraphs, Or are the sentences more complex with more detailed description, including similes and metaphors? Cite evidences. Ma'am Mary Grace, Ma'am Gracia, you there?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am?
Would you like to share your response for this question?
Yes po. Hanapin ko lang po.
So while she's looking for it, okay, allow me to read from one of your classmates again. Um, your classmate said the language used what complex. The languages used are more complex, especially those medical terms used. Okay, although a lot of conversations are direct and short, there's a lot of terms that are complicated. So, meaning it's more of the plot driven. At the same time, it focuses on a certain field, right? That's also possible. Another one from your classmate. Okay, the language is simple and direct since the book is written for ages 8 to 15 years old. And it tends to be understandable at this age. Also, the main character is from the perspective of a middle school to high school. Okay, so it's YA or mostly for teens rather. Okay, about Kyle, Sir Kyle.
Um,
Yeah.
the one that I said,
Mm-hmm.
direct
It's
and then
direct. Okay.
and the English words are complex.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's direct and relatively short sentences. Thank you, Sir Kyle.
Ma'am, I'm ready na po.
Sure, go.
The sentences more complex with a more detailed description. This is the, ano po, some part lang po dun sa book of Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
He was standing at the end of very long, dimly lit chamber, towering stone pillars entwined with more carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long, black shadows through the odd, greenish gloom that filled the place. And yun lang po.
Okay.
And ma'am, I don't have camera po kasi nagloloko po yung sa
It's
lab.
okay, Ma'am Gracia. Yeah, don't feel sorry about it. Okay. So as you notice, that setting, right? That what you read talks about the setting. So vivid description, right, of the scenery, the mood, right, even the time of the day. You can see that. Okay. Thank you. So how about okay, this part? I think it's so. I mean, of course, it's possible that you have similar answers, right? So I only asked you, there are so many lessons that you can take from this selection, but I'm going to ask you to give at least five, right? So what are these five lessons? Okay, five practical lessons that you can get, right, from the selection. Anyone? Can you give one? Mary Pauline, Ma'am Pauline, you may unmute, ma'am. Are you there, Ma'am Pao? Okay, so it's about taking lessons from other writers. How about Ma'am Laurie? Ma'am Laurie Ann? You're not there? Ma'am Mary Rose, you may unmute. They're not here. I don't know where they. How about Cassandra? Cassandra, can you give one practical lesson you found most useful to you from this selection? Okay, definitely, right? Depending on what book you're reading, you can actually be influenced by the writers, their style, right? The language used, even sometimes the emotions, right? That will determine the theme of your target literary piece. Mamaya, can you give us the lessons that you can take from that you think you found most useful to you?
Only one, ma'am.
Hmm.
Okay.
Or you may give the five
Mine
if
is
you like.
oh, okay. I just copied what I've read from here.
Sure.
These are the 5 items. Number one is when you read, think consciously about the way the book is written, particularly how many points of view and location exist in the story.
Mhm.
Because sometimes when I write too much locations in the story that it becomes too confusing.
Yeah.
The main location is forgotten.
Oh, okay. So that's one thing you need to focus on. Thank you. Another, Mamaya?
Number two is beware of writing something that's too close to a book that already exists.
Correct.
Plagiarism.
Yeah. Right. Or maybe it's not too I mean, you really didn't copy, right? Verbatimly the words used by the same author, but I mean the plot, like everything that happened there, right? So it seems like it's the same thing. Okay, thank you. How about another one, Mamaya? The third?
The third one is look at the techniques the writer uses to convey the way people speak in dialogue, to describe a scene or build suspense, because sometimes I wrote too much in detail that the main conversation becomes too blurry.
Okay, so at least, so meaning you have, you've been practicing that, right? Even before, and then you notice. It's good that you're able to assess your own writing. That's great to hear. Okay, thank you. So, how about this? Make a list of different possible titles for your story from each of the preceding categories. Think about which one you like best and why. Anyone?
Hello guys.
Yes? Who is that? Hello as well. Okay, how would like to share their possible titles? Or allow me to read your classmates again? Okay. So, titles. Okay. From one of your classmates, Gregory Heffley. Oh, there's a name. Other possible title. The Halloween of Gregory Heffley. Being a young adult of Gregory Heffley. Okay. The Halloween of Gregory Heffley because being a childhood, like any kinds of occasion, uh, gives or shows happiness. One of this is celebrating Halloween because it's all about candles, different costumes that you see, right? Some are scary, cartoon, heroes, fairy tale characters. More candles, more fun. I'm carried away while I'm answering this question. Life is so short, and they always say that. I see in this book, The Diary of the Wimpy Kid, of a wimpy kid is so what touching. Kids are kids. Life is life. We must enjoy and see the truth or the true happiness. It's not always the money or about the money. We can enjoy small things. Okay, and he said that his life, he or she, rather, my life when I was a kid was not like this. I always need to study hard, take care of my siblings because I'm the eldest, help my mom do the household chores. I must be a role model. My mom, like this, what you do wrong, your brother and sister will do it also. Lucky in the other way, but I forgot what the most useful childhood I like when I was a child. With that expression, I can't answer because I didn't experience it. But always, my mom said that until now, I also said to be remembered for my kids to do good, search for a good friend or look for a good friend. And he used Filipino here, kahit na isa lang ang iyong kaibigan, basta mabuti siya. Okay lang kasi kung ano ang iyong kaibigan, yun din ang iyong pagkatao. Oh, this person believes in that, cliche, right? Like tell me who your friends are and I tell you who you are. But of course, you can still stand, right? And I mean, stand out, right? Especially if you're talking about the positive things. How about Sir Jervy? Would you like to share your possible titles?
Um, can you hear me, ma'am?
I can hear you.
Um, the title that I chose is entitled Poignant Feeling. It was under the theme of the book.
Okay. Pardon, is that
Um,
That point of feeling.
uh, poignant feeling.
Okay.
Uh,
And
um, Poignant feeling is one that I like the most. First of all, poignant, poignant is an adjective which also means extreme sadness.
mm,
I chose this title for the reason of confiding and writing all my sad feelings that I myself is experiencing during this tough time.
mm,
I know everyone can relate from this topic, and I
mm,
hope that my story will serve as a lesson and inspiration to the readers to
mm.
be always grateful and to never lose hope in life.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Uh,
To start, another response from your classmate. To start with, I thought of titles such as the simulation for the science fiction genre, prisoners, history, the ship of state for fantasy, if ever we happen for romance. Okay. Dahlia, horror. Okay. However, among the titles on the list, what I like best is title His Eyes Are Watching. Okay, a psychological thriller drama about a 3 a.m. myth. Ah, I know this. Yeah, the 3 a.m. myth is known as the watching hour when supernatural forces are at their strongest. Also, it is the instance of suddenly waking up at 3 a.m., feeling uneasy about something or anything which one cannot explain. It includes an eerie sensation of being watched and the feeling that someone unseen has its eyes on you. I chose it for its relatability and realism about the issue. Additionally, for its underlying message, caution, and forewarning to people who have will experience it. Okay, that's a cool, right? And I can see that he already has, the whole concept in mind. So thank you for sharing your output here. Okay, another is a narrative paragraph about your writing experience. So this is based on your own experience in drafting any type of text. Okay, regardless of the genre, regardless of the type. Okay, include your habits and techniques. So whatever you're writing. Who would like to share? You may click raise a hand button if you'd like to volunteer. Or I will just go. Sir James, you're there? Are you there? Sir Isaiah? Yes. Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. You're next, Mama Rufina. Yes, Sir James?
Yes. Write the narrative paragraph about a writing experience in drafting any type of text. So this is what I have written. Writing is not a walk in the ballpark. Writing is like se- stitching patches of unforeseen events while unraveling sequences of the whole whatsoever one is doing.
Mhm,
The possibilities of outcomes and the numerous aftermath of actions from the character or persona make the future events uncertain no matter how one plans everything out in their outline or draft.
mhm,
One will probably say, and so what next?
mhm,
These uncertainties also includes the, the appropriate usage of vocabularies or terminologies, correct tones
mhm,
or voice for certain situations,
mhm,
situational structures of the sentences,
mhm,
suitable structure of sentences, better figure of speech to use, and etc. However, these uncertainties are the reason that makes writing so fun. It is like creating bridges of surprises, which makes it different, far better than usual or the cliches.
mhm,
It is like picking the best fruit out of the best fruits,
mhm,
or maybe having a universe of thoughts to create the best planet out of the cosmos.
mhm,
Well, it's not that easy, but it's not that hard unless one hates writing.
mhm,
One must reinvent exits to finish the write-ups. These exits might differ from other people. However, handful of them are advantages in filling gaps. These gaps, these habits and methods includes euphemism, parallelism,
mhm, yeah.
incorporating subliminal messages, foreshadowing of events, using a stream of consciousness, referring another book, events, characters, quotations, etc., or using different figure of speeches, especially personification and metaphors, and many more. For instance, one might procrastinate their writings, for everything must follow naturally. One must forge things to happen, as they will sometimes ruin the thoughts. But at some unexpected points, they help too. Subsequently, dictionaries and thesaurus are a big help in enhancing vocabularies. In any case, one must jot down possible scenarios to a single premise.
Mhm.
It helps much in deepening the plot of the story. Ultimately, the most significant of them all is when conserving the raw emotions embedded within the text or its entirety.
Mhm.
It is the hardest to achieve, yet the most satisfying of all. It's like a soul buried between the text, waiting to touch the reader's unpre- unprepared senses.
Mhm.
To wrap things up, there are thousands of paths that lead to the same place, varieties of methods and habits to satisfy our heart's contents.
Mhm.
And with the help of them, all uncertainties will sure to fade to black, thus making my walk in the ballpark fun and lively.
Okay. Wow, that's a comprehensive, right, narration of your writing experience, like any type of text. And I assume based on the technicalities, even right, the grammar, the mechanics, rather, right? It shows that you've experienced a lot of, writing experiences in the past. Would you like to share those literary pieces you've done, or any type of text, like essays, academic ones, or feature?
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'll look for.
Like college? I mean, a few
Oh,
years back or high school?
well, I've been writing for almost 9 years or 10 years.
Okay, have you published all those?
No.
I mean, what type of text? What type of text have you been writing?
Uh, Actually, it depends on what I like the most. I write poems and short
Oh,
stories. Mostly, I focus on poems.
okay. Wow, it will be easier for you, right, to accomplish our activities. So thank you for sharing. Right.
Yes.
Thank you for your experience in writing. I hope, right, we're awakened of those things that we need to focus on. But again, just like previously or from our previous discussion, right, you learn to tame, right? Please tame your grammar Nazi attitude, your grammar pedantry syndrome. Okay, just go with the flow. Just continue, just like what Sir mentioned right earlier. Just continue the flow, right, of your thoughts. Keep them calming, right? Okay. How about last one to share? Someone raised a hand, right? Ma'am Rufina, I think you raised a hand. Are you still there? You may unmute now, ma'am. Okay, Sir Maki said wow in the chat. Okay. Ma'am Rufina, you raised a hand, sorry. It's your turn now. You may share. Okay, maybe later. Okay. So as we continue, okay, let's start with fiction writing. So this is a heads up for those who are thinking of, being inspired to use your own story because it's fiction, right? We need to focus on fiction, not non-fiction. Okay. So just a heads up because earlier many shared, not really many, but most of the time your responses are based on your own experiences. That's good, right? But I hope you will just use them to serve as inspiration to you, right? Because again, we'll focus on fiction writing for this lesson. Okay, so our objectives, you will answer comprehension questions concerning fiction, write down your ideas using a spider web, and develop your ideas further by providing entries for each element of a story. So, of course, right, even before you already familiar, right, with the elements of a story, at least a short story. So, but still, we will dig deeper into each, give you tips, right, and reasons on why you need to, be very particular with your certain element, right? And let's start with a mini game, but it's quite somehow it will be a long game. Okay, but we can use this as springboard as we continue our discussion. So the title of the game is I'll continue what you've started, but one of you will start. It's not me, but I will simply guide you with some elements. All right. So let me flash a whiteboard because you need to focus on. Okay, you will be the one to give the setting, characters, theme, and then the parts of the plot like exposition, conflict, climax, and resolution and end. But the game will start with the exposition, of course. But let's decide first on your setting, characters. So someone will start and then another one will continue until we finish an entire story. Okay. I hope that we will. Well, it's up to you. Okay, I don't want to preempt, but this is the usual ending, right? That I always encounter from my students that it's just a dream and it's the end. And then upon waking up, right, it's everything is just a dream. So let's veer away from that kind of ending, right? Because it's commonly used, okay, by young writers. Okay, let's start. I will show you. Okay, let's use a whiteboard. Okay, so I would like you to think of the characters. You may unmute or type in the chat name of the characters you like. Let's start with the setting. Sorry, anyone? Let's start. Like the place. Where do you like? Or the places. Anyone? You may unmute. Please contribute. Yeah.
UP Lagoon.
Where? Where? Sorry.
UP Lagoon.
Okay. Wow. PUP Lagoon. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Where else do you like this story to happen? Anyone? You may unmute. Maybe three. At most three locations. Alright. Do you want me to call you? I would like you to volunteer. Just say anything.
What about chapel?
Okay. Is that PUP Chapel as well?
Ah, yes, ma'am.
PUP Chapel. Okay.
Mom in Maki's house.
Maki's house. Okay. I just hope others can relate. Maybe you can just imagine Maki's house because not everyone has been to Maki's house. Okay. Maybe we can have the three. Okay. How about your characters? Can you give me names?
Asta.
Mm,
Pardon?
Asta.
Emily, ma'am.
Emily. Okay. For Emily. What else? Asta? Is this how you spell it?
Yes, ma'am. Asta.
Okay. More characters, please.
Gabrielle.
Okay. Gabrielle. Who else?
Noah.
Noah. Okay. Who else?
Gio.
Pardon? Paula?
Gio. Gio, ma'am.
Gio. Are these your... I don't know. Okay.
And Jeric.
Jeric. With J? Other. How about...
Kyle.
you may not use, always a proper noun, right? Some characters are also not named in stories. Anyone? Will that be
What
all?
about, what about Lucas?
Luke.
Ma'am Tekla.
Oh my. Okay. Lucas and Tekla. Okay. No more? You'll be the one to create your own story, yeah? Okay. How about what else? The theme, of course. Theme.
Horror.
Oh, okay. What is this horror? Okay, maybe you'd like to add at least two. Oh, let's focus on horror.
Comedy.
Halloween. Okay, horror comedy. Okay. Oh,
Comedy.
okay. Okay. What else are we missing? What else are we missing?
Fantasy, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry. Genre. Okay.
Fantasy.
Okay, it's fantasy. Okay, let's start. Who likes to start? With the exposition. Anyone?
Ma'am,
Yes. You are? Sorry.
Isaiah,
Oh,
Marquis.
or RJ. Ah, sorry.
Um, it was a dark and stormy night.
Mhm. Wait, we lack, sorry. Yeah, the place, and we need the time, sorry. Stormy. Sorry, we need that, yeah. We forgot the time. Okay. Or the mood. So, stormy night. Okay, continue.
When Lucas went to Tekla's house, to Maki's house.
Okay, so Tekla is this.
Uh, I guess that's okay.
Okay, so the exposition started when. Okay, it was a
Yes.
stormy night. So, no place yet. Ah, there's Maki's house. Okay, it was a stormy night when Tekla went to. Okay. So, you go.
When Lucas went to Tekla's house.
Okay, thank you. So let's add, sorry, the point of view as well. So let's have third person and first person. First and third. Okay. So who likes to continue that? Hmm. Anyone?
Hi, Maya,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes, Mamaya.
Fortunately, the whole group was at Maki's house,
Hmm. Would you like to
and
name the
Tekla,
group? Would you like to name the members of the group that you mentioned?
all the characters, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
And Tekla invited everyone to go to PUP Lagoon at midnight.
Okay. So it was a stormy night, maybe just early in the evening, and then at midnight, okay, they decided to go to the PUP Lagoon. Okay, thank you, Mamaya. Another, so there's no conflict yet, huh? Still
Um,
setting. Yes?
While
um, Tekla,
Mm-hmm.
Tekla went to swim in lagoon.
Okay. Okay, let's just assume the PUP Lagoon was clean. Okay, let's assume. Okay, thank you, Mary Grace. So still, exposition. Okay. Oh, likes to continue, Sir Pao? You're saying something earlier?
and and Tekla became a mermaid,
Oh,
merman,
so you're not sure. It's up to you. It's fiction. So a mermaid or a merman? You have to decide.
merman, ma'am, merman.
Okay, a merman. Okay. Okay. Would like to continue that? Anyone?
Ma'am,
Okay, go again. Ma'am Grace.
one is ano po, responding. So, um, Emily, Asta, Gabriel, Noah, Gio, Jeric, and Lucas saw Tekla transformed into a merman.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Asta,
Mm-hmm.
Asta, shook, Asta, shook about what happened to Tekla. And so,
Shook or what?
shook, ma'am, nagulat.
I.
Shock pala siya. Shook.
Okay.
Then, um, the other characters didn't know that Asta has a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because Asta is super shook, he grabbed his gun and then shoot Tekla. And then Tekla died.
Oh my God! That's the end. Wait. Fast.
It's not the end. It's still not the
Second,
end.
There's more. There's more. Tekla died quickly.
The ano, ma'am, it's the nasa ano pa lang po tayo, nasa gitna ng story.
That's a conflict, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a conflict. Tekla died. Okay. Let's to continue. Let's to continue that. I hope you're able to follow. Let's not, of course, use the elements term like what do you call it, the characters. You have to name them or you have to give modifier to them. Okay. Likes to continue. Sir Kai.
when
Yes, Sir Paulo. Sorry.
when they notice that Tekla is dead,
Mm-hmm.
Emily has a secret power to give life,
Okay.
to give life.
Tekla.
So Emily secretly healed or give life to Tekla again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the
Wait lang, Ana.
Okay. Thank you. Who likes to continue that?
But Tekla did not revive
Okay. So,
because
because
Gabriel, I guess Emily and Gabriel found out that they had to put Tekla to the PUP chapel.
oh, okay. So there's a special occasion for the revival or resurrection of Tekla. Okay. Thank you, Mamaya. Next event that happened
But they can't enter to the chapel.
because it's locked.
Because Tekla was cursed.
Oh, okay. And what's the curse?
Um,
How about anyone? I'd like to continue that. Yes, someone is unmuted. Who's that? Ma'am Maurice. Ma'am Maurice, you'd like to continue? You are now at PUP Chapel. What do you think happened next? Yes, Sir Mackie.
So finally, they were able to unlock the gate of the chapel. Then they carried the body of Tekla into the center of the chapel.
Wait, how is it
Because
possible
of the
that
good
they're able to unlock the gate if at first they can't unlock it? How is it possible?
someone's unlocked it.
Okay, so
Little
just
they
that
didn't know.
easy, yeah, okay. And then what happened?
Little they didn't know, Asta is the one who unlocked the gate,
Mm-hmm.
and he sacrifices Jeric's body to
Okay.
revive Tekla.
Oh, okay, okay. So Asta is a man. I thought, okay, he's a man.
Asta is a quack doctor.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sir
He
Mackie.
uses rituals.
Okay, there's a ritual that happened. Next, Ma'am April. What do you think happened next? So they sacrificed the body of Eric.
Sorry, ma'am, I wasn't able to hear Maki's response.
Okay, he said that they were able to unlock the gate of PUP Chapel, right? Because of the is that superpowers of Asta? Okay. Sir Mackie? Okay, yeah, that's right. And then inside the chapel, they performed a ritual. What do you call the
Mm,
ritual, Sir Mackie?
mm.
Asta performed a
Oh,
ritual to sacrifice Jeric's body.
Okay, they sacrificed
mm.
body. Yes, Ma'am April. You're next, Ma'am.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. However, um, they wait. A sudden breeze went inside the chapel,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a light.
Mm-hmm.
A man standing right into the chapel store, and it was Tekla.
Oh, okay.
And then they were all shocked because they wait sorry, um they were shocked upon knowing that sorry, okay, they were shocked upon realizing that the one they lifted up from lagoon uh to uh to do the ritual
Mm-hmm.
in the chapel was not actually Tekla, but a
Oh.
creature they didn't know living in the PP lagoon.
Oh, we are at okay. Maybe that creature transferred right from PP Lagoon to PP Chapel. Thank you, Ma'am April.
Yes.
Is that it? Sorry. Okay, how about Ma'am Francesca? You raise a hand. It's your turn now. So we're done. You haven't used first person, huh? So you may use the first person. We're done with the comedy part, fantasy. Okay. all these. Ma'am Francesca?
Should write a comment, ma'am.
Ay, sorry. Allow me to read that. Okay, so G suddenly, what's the verb here? Sorry. Maybe saw someone, and that person is Tekla, who's walking but not using his feet. Oh, it's levity. He's floating, right? In the middle of the cold, stormy night with a red, bloody face. Oh, this is creepy. While he's on his way, he unfortunately bumped into the ceiling because he's already too high. So again, it's what? It's comedies, horror, and then comedy right away. Okay, thank you, Francesca.
Suddenly someone.
Yes, who likes to continue this from Francesca?
When me, ma'am.
Okay, go.
When Tekla bumped into the ceiling, a key suddenly fell down from his pocket, and it was the key to get out of PUP.
Oh, okay. Is that PUP main gate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's the key. What happened next? Oh, I
Me,
think you're
ma'am.
near the. Yes. Okay, go.
And when they get out from PUP, they dance una-una kaya-kaya.
Is that with the steps of Blackpink? If you're referring to that one.
They're doing like that.
Okay. The folk dance. Okay. I think you're now in the end, right? The resolution part because they can now leave the PP. So your climax happened during the ritual, right? Maybe you can imagine, the sound effects there, right? Even the sound, I mean the noises, right? The voices of the characters. Okay. Were we able to use all names at the end? Okay. So you know what I'm
No was not
imagining.
yet mentioned.
Yes, yes. Now who's that say?
No was not yet mentioned.
Okay, yeah, Noah. Maybe he's the guard. Wait, wait. The one to preempt. Okay, so after. Okay, now they're what on their way out. Am I right, Sir Paolo?
Ma'am.
Okay, are they on their way out because they have the key?
Um,
Yes. Mm.
um, uh, diba, ah, a while ago, Maki mentioned po that Derek was, he was the sacrifice, yeah, siya yung sinacrifice, di ba po?
Mm-hmm.
So, Emily, Asta, Gabriel, Noah, Gio, Lucas, and Tekla already went outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jeric, nabuhay po.
Okay.
Hindi pa siya nabuhay. Parang, he became a ghost.
Oh.
And then, the ending, ma'am, tinapos na. The ending will be, he went outside, he followed those characters, and then the ending would be pinatay po niya. He killed all of them,
Okay.
and then he lived happily ever after.
Okay, so at first, okay, thank you, and congratulations to your horror comedy, right, fantasy story. I was actually imagining of a Filipino, you know, a common Filipino comedy film, right? Like Vice Ganda's film, while following your story. But of course, you notice that I don't know there are some, instances, right, or situations that were not really, I mean, well established, like the relationship of these people, right? So maybe we can focus on those things. Okay. So thank you. Okay, for your participation. Let us continue. So we can use at least, right, that as springboard later. Okay, so let's continue. So fiction is a make-believe invented stories that may be short stories, fables, plays, novels, and novellas. So, right, just like your story, I assume it's a make-believe story, right? And now, right, you will be writing your own, or how will you be writing your own fiction? So we have to include the following elements. But let's start with the first one. So, Ernest Hemingway said, This is from Death in the Afternoon. When writing a novel, a writer should create living people, people, not characters. A character is a caricature. Would like to guess, right? What element first we're going to talk about now? You may type in the chat your responses. Anyone or any
Character.
like? Okay, yeah, we'll talk about characters. Okay, there are answers in the chat. Okay, yeah, talk about characters. So he said, when writing a novel, a writer should create living people as if they are real people in a real what story in real life. Okay, so characters. Okay, so think of a story without characters. Right? I don't think there's no story without characters. They are important there. They give life, right, to the story. And they can be people, they can be animals, aliens, if you believe in aliens, or anything with which their voices can be used to dictate what is happening and may happen. And you can create major characters, right? If you like, there's a leading man, right, or leading lady, or second lead, right? And villains as well, and flawed anti-heroes as well as those colorful minor characters, right, who may also help in shaping the flow of the event. So since the majority of the characters you mentioned earlier were simply, names, and you aren't able to establish, right, their, disposition in life, their status in life, right, occupations at least. So we just assume, since they use PUP, are they what, friends, right? Are they PUPians? Are they students? Okay, so it's important. So yeah, anyone or anything who's existing in the story, correct? Mount Francesca. Okay, as we continue, there are two types, right? We can have the hero or the heroine, also called as the protagonist, right? Or for example, we have here Hazel Lancaster, or Hazel Grace Lancaster. She was born on. You have to establish also, right? Her character. Okay, she was born on September 29th, 1996. She is age 16. You include also the age. She's an only child and is the daughter to Mr. Lancaster and Mrs. Lancaster, friend of Isaac and girlfriend to Augustus Waters. Hazel finished high school early and has already begun pursuing a college education. She's diagnosed with stage 4 thyroid cancer with metastasis forming in her lungs, but has managed to live with her disease, right? Owing to doses of an experimental drug called, Falaxid 4, which does not exist outside of the book, of course. Okay, we have here the protagonist, and of course we have, right, the villain or the antagonist in a story. So if you have read the book, okay, this one, Devil Wears Prada, they even have, a movie adaptation. So we have here Miranda Priestley. She's born, right, Miriam Princhek in the East End of London in October 1949. You will notice also that in the book all characters are established, right, from their description, their occupation, even their background. Right, her family members were poor but devout Orthodox Jews. The family relied on the community for support because her father worked odd jobs occasionally and her mother died in childbirth. So you may continue using those. Okay, we also have an anti-hero, right, who is also a protagonist, but they are someone who don't fit with the standard of a hero. They're also the opposite of the hero or the heroine, who are morally good since they may have dark traits. So for example, okay, we have here, okay, from, the Great Gatsby, right, and J. Alfred Prufrock, present in the poem The Love Song of J. Alfred. Okay, you notice here we have Jay Gatsby as the perfect example of the anti-hero. And to begin, James Gats was a man born into poverty who greatly despised being poor. And he was young, honorable military officer when he first met Daisy Buchanan. Okay, he immediately fell in love with her charm, beauty, and luxury and lied about his destitute background in order to assure her that he was good enough. So I think this is also common character, right? A role in some of the new, stories or novels that we have. Okay, we also have Macbeth, right? So the story Macbeth is like no other in plot and poetry. It sets itself apart from the rest by being a protagonist being becoming evil. So what makes Macbeth such a complicated character is the way his outlook keeps on changing throughout the play. And Macbeth is an evil man and is not overpowered by ambition to get what he wants. Okay, the witches did not force him to do evil, and they simply, the catalyst. And in the beginning of the play, and Macbeth is a hero in the Scottish army. That is ironic, I think, for Macbeth has defeated a traitor and he will soon become one. So you can set the mood or the characters in your perspective, but of course we don't like to imitate, right? They can be simply inspiration for you. So we also have minor characters, right? It's important that you have minor characters in your story. Okay, they are those who may be supporting the main characters or those who may oppose the ways of the protagonist. Usually, it's also common in, rom-com, right? Stories or even romance, they always have, supporting character or minor character that usually supports the leading lady or like a best friend of a leading lady, right? Or best friend of the leading man. So, to give you a tip, yeah, one minor character may also play as someone who supports the hero at first, but turns out to be in the opposition or vice versa. So, the idea of betrayal there on the part of the minor character, right? So we have here Katniss' mother. Okay, although she goes unnamed, Katniss's mother weighs heavily on Katniss' mind. She came from apothecary family and for this reason knows a great deal about medicinal plants and herbs. So we also have here Petunia Dursley was the Muggle aunt and guardian of Harry Potter. Okay, and we have, of course, uh, Judas Iscariot. He is remembered, right, for one thing, his betrayal of Jesus Christ. So at first, right, minor character that supports, right, the lead character, but later on, okay, betrayed, okay, the main character. So remember, in creating characters, you have to mold them as if they are real. Okay, it's not just because you use a realistic name, right? You have to give them a personality. You have to give them life, of course, in order for one to shape the juiciness of the story. Okay, so would you like to give some before we proceed to the next element? Would you like to give your favorite characters in your own? I mean, in the stories that you've read, and then would you like to give us how the author established the character? For example, giving the history, historical background, right? The race, for instance, the age, right? The attitude.
May I have an example?
Okay, please share.
Because I don't know if this is a book also, but I watched it before in television.
Mm-hmm.
She is a protagonist and antagonist in her story, ma'am. Like Ruby.
Ah, okay.
Ruby, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So that's one, right? Another. Thank you for that.
I
Yes,
I also have an example, ma'am,
okay.
similar to Mr. Andrade.
Mhm.
It was a book from Sydney Sheldon, Tell Me Your Dreams. It was a woman who is a protagonist at first, searching for the serial killer, but it turned out it was her all along.
Oh, okay. So that reminds me actually of what the Gone Girl. That reminds me of that, right? At first, we thought it's the husband, but it's her, right? It's her scheme all along. Okay, thank you, Mamaya. So let's proceed to the next. Places are never just places in a piece of writing. If they are, the author has failed. Setting is not inert. It is activated by point of view. What do you think is the next element? Yes, we have answer in the chat. Okay, correct. The setting. Okay, so this is where and when of the story. Okay, sorry. Okay, okay. So that is where and when of the story. Would you like to give me example? So your story may take place in a coffee shop, right? Like this one, a quiet garden, a diner, or even in a cemetery, right? And it may also function as a force that will help you in shaping your characters depending on where they are. So earlier, right, you use PUP Lagoon, PUP Chapel. So we can assume, right, that the characters, are related, or maybe they reside, right, in that place. Okay. You may also write with the setting that you are familiar with, or if not, you may research, right? For some, I mean, sometimes you are, inspired by your dream place, right? So you use other country, other cities, other states. Okay, so you may write with the setting that you are familiar with. Again, you may research about the place you wanted to include in your masterpiece in order to be accurate. Right? So for example, in again at the Fall in Our Stars, right? The place is Amsterdam, right? And she even, I mean, John Green even included, right, the house of Anne Frank in terms of that, and many stories now, right? Even script. Okay, there's chat. Yeah, setting. Okay, anyone who'd like to share a memorable setting in a book that you've read? Sometimes it's historical, right? You even include research. I mean, your research about what happened historically, and you're related to that. Okay. Anyone? Just for you to, for your setting to sound realistic. Ma'am April?
Yes, ma'am. In the book I read, the scene happened in the bathroom in which the um, character was raped there
Mm-hmm.
by the antagonist of the story. The in the boys' bathroom.
Mm-hmm. So how is
One of the set.
how do you think the
What?
setting is described there?
How will I, ma'am? Sorry, ma'am.
How is the setting described there? How is the bathroom described?
Oh, and ma'am, it was said that that along Michael Sullivan met Mary Ann along in the alley, and they went inside in the club. And then from the moment that they are having a spark with each other, Michael started to take Mary Ann
Mm-hmm.
and went straight to the boys' bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then there he started to rape Mary Ann in a very descriptive
Morbid,
way.
morbid way.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So that's the setting. So someone also type here Hogwarts. Okay, you may create your own place as well. Just make sure to give vivid description. Usually it sets, right, the story. Usually you see this in the exposition part. So at least, right, you're setting the mood, including the time, right? So earlier you chose the place, PP Lagoon, PP Chapel, Stormy Night, and Midnight. Okay. So next element we have, it's obvious here, the plot. So Ray said plot is no more than footprints left in the snow after your characters have run by on their way to incredible destinations. So plot, right, talks about the order of events in the story. So from exposition to the ending or denouement. Okay, so now that you have the characters in the setting, don't be plagued with the blank page syndrome, right? Start writing the events, the plot. So, plot is the order of events in a story. And in writing a fictional plot, be able to make your readers empathize with the characters. They need to feel your characters, they need to relate to their life, to their struggles, right? To their emotions. With the flow, make them feel as if it may happen to them as well. And usually, this is how we read, right? It's how we read stories, how we read novels. Usually you feel like, oh, it's fiction, right? But you feel like it can happen in real life. So you need to leave that mindset or imagery to your readers. But of course, you have to leave also out, right? All of the boring parts and keep on making them gasp for more. So in this case, this reminds me of the novel, okay, Another Day by David Levithan. In that case, even though really, I mean, it's impossible, right? It's fictional that one soul can transfer to different bodies, but we don't know, right? I mean, that's how, right? The plot affected me that I thought that it can happen in real life. Okay, so first, second, third. Lastly, okay, so you're using what transitional device to connect them. Okay, so but you may use other what transitional devices there. So there are five essential elements of a plot. So first is of course you need to introduce the characters. That's the exposition part. The trigger, a triggering event. So we can say that it's when Tekla became Merman and then suddenly, right, he was killed. And of course the climax, right, falling action and denouement or resolution. So okay, so we have narrative structures or plot patterns. Just to review you, if you already had this in your developmental reading, let's try to review this. Okay, it's a literary element, structure, or framework that underlies the order and manner in which a narrative is presented to a reader, listener, or viewer, because it's not just one cycle. There are many patterns of narration. The content of a story and the form used to tell the story. So it's about a story, right? And plot, its story refers to the dramatic action as it might be described in chronological order, but that's not the only pattern. So let's look at the kinds of narrative structure in short stories. We have all these. We will discuss each. Linear narration, flashbacks and stream of consciousness, parallel and frame structures, and circular stories. So all short stories, regardless of individual structure, they include characterization, conflict, and resolution. But exactly how the author chooses to bring together each of the story's events and elements, and then the author reveals them to the reader, right? We call it the story's narrative structure. And usually, if you are fond of reading, right, you were or even watching, right, you will realize that at some point you can't meet halfway, right, with the author's plot, right, or narrative structure, because sometimes you feel like you can guess what will happen next, but literally it's a turnaround of events. And the short story genre reveals many patterns, right, and subgenres of narrative structure. Some are familiar and comfortable, while others are innovative and fresh, especially for the thriller, mystery side, right? For example, the young adult um, section now. Throughout literary history, authors have introduced and they modified and created many different kinds of narrative structure. So let's start with the linear narration or chronological structure. So the typical way of telling the story from beginning to the end. It's just that. So it's the most common, it's like what I said, and most straightforward of narrative structure, written in chronological order with little or no variation, and it does not include flashbacks or dream sequences, but relate the story as it is happening. Or from it's like your everyday routine. It's just that and end. Okay, focus remains in the present rather than the past or the future. An example of this is the Guide Maupassant, right? Story. Maybe you're familiar with this since what, high school or elementary, right? The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. It's an example of a linear story. The short story opens with Madame Loisel's desire for the fame, right? Remember, and wealth, and in sequential order, the author reveals the character's flawed attempt to achieve status, right? Followed by the sad consequences of her misdirected desires. And the short story concludes with a dramatic and ironic revelation and quick resolution, which is a common technique, of course, for linear stories. You have that. Other example is the boy in striped pajamas and others. It can be useful for identifying the key elements of the plot before you decide on how to structure your story. Usually, you have to set that from right the exposition, conflict, climax, and falling action or the resolution, and then the ending or denouement. So we have chat here. Yeah, A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. Okay. So next, we have flashbacks and stream of consciousness. So example, it's non-linear narrative structure because again, there's flashback. You go to the past, you go back to the past, and then reveal something, right, that can be related at present events. So it's not concerned with chronological sequencing of events. So we have here. It often portrays stories of one's youth, such as personal growth or innocence, lost innocence lost, rather using time altering devices. And one common also now is stream of consciousness. An author pays no heed to time outside stimuli or traditional conventions. It is common when the speaker just have, even when you're talking to the character is talking to another character, right? Verbally, there's stream of consciousness. There's still lines, right? There's still dialogues happening in, or rather monologue happening in the character's mind. So examples, of course, yeah, in The Fault in the Stars, we had I'm sorry. Okay, in The Fault in the Stars, we have the flashback there, the shack. David Leviathan for Stream of Consciousness. There's a lot because it is also narrated from the first person point of view. In The Devil Wears Prada, a lot of stream of consciousness because of the lead character there, the protagonist, who kept on, you know, um, stating clamor, blunting out, right, clamor or complaints about Priestley. Okay, and Every Day Here, Every You, Every Me, also by David Leviathan for Stream of Consciousness. Okay, so as usual, right, this one for David Leviathan, the two books are told in a kind of usually stream of consciousness, which I really enjoyed since this book focuses on the thematics of who you are inside. Because again, just like what I told you, the character's soul, okay, transfers to another body every day. So it's versus your physical image. And I'm sorry, it's raining. Is my background noise so loud? Because I can hear the rain. Is it so loud? I can also hear myself. It's loud. Okay. But can you still hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
because I
Yes, ma'am.
can hear the rain. Okay, sorry for that. I hope my connection is not affected. Okay, so I feel like a strong point for Another Day and Every Day is the message it delivers. While for The Devil Wears Prada, it gives a rich and hilarious new meaning to complaints about the boss from hell. Right? It's more of, there are so many modifiers used for fashion. So if you're not into fashion, maybe, right, you might feel alienated because of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone who'd like to share a story where you realize there's a flashback? Yes, Ma'am Ingrid.
Hi, mom. It's a local story, C by Bob Ong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's if you read it, mom, it starts with the last chapter and then the second to the last up until the chapter 1. So the whole story comes with a really really long flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
of all the lives he's lived,
Mm-hmm.
because the protagonist is a senior citizen, and I think he's already in his 81st birthday, 70. And then his wife Victoria asked him, anong gusto mong maalala ngayong araw? Tapos sabi, and then the guy told her, lahat.
Yeah.
And then the whole story comes with a flashback. Every chapter is a story of his past life. Started with the first moment he met Victoria. That's the very last chapter. The first moment he met Victoria, and then the first, really, very, very first chapter is the last chapter is when he's already old, and then it's like Benjamin Button, but in a novel.
In novel. Okay.
So the story goes backwards instead of forward.
Forward. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Ma'am
Yeah.
Ingrid. Okay. So another example. Also here, right? Even when the script, right? Even with the script of the following series, right? It's so obvious. I mean, very, prevalent in K dramas, right? Flashback and stream of consciousness, definitely. It's so obvious there. We have your New Girl series, also a lot of stream of consciousness and flashback every time they will tell a story, right? Or their character, they will go to, their childhood, they will reminisce, and that's what happened. Also, The Good Place for stream of consciousness. And this one, Altamar or High Seas, also series. Okay. How about you? How about for stream of consciousness? Would you like to give me example? Anyone? Sir Keith, are you there? Sir Keith? About what else? Sir Kyle, how about for stream of consciousness? Were you able to read or at least watch something that shows stream of consciousness? Anyone? Sir Paulo? No one?
I don't have any example, ma'am.
Yes?
I don't have any example po.
Pardon? Sorry, I can't understand.
I don't have any example, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Sir Kyle.
Sorry po.
It's okay. Sir Isaiah? Again, yeah, thank you, Mamaya. To clarify, yeah, stream of consciousness is when the character states monologue even though she's actually doing a dialogue with another character. So maybe you've watched or read stories like this. So it's mostly for first person point of view, right? So it pays just like in the explanation earlier. It pays no attention to time, like whether you're talking real time, you have a lot of right stream of consciousness. I mean, you're thinking about things. So for example, you're talking to someone and you're praising, right? You're praising that person, but in your mind you're saying a lot of negative things. You get it? Okay. Mean Girls po. Yes, okay. What else? Mhm.
Ma'am,
Yes.
how about I don't know, ma'am, if it is fit Black Swan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, sir. How about who else? Ma'am Joanna? The originals, okay? So you're giving me, yeah, series. Yes, sir Isaiah, you unmute.
Yeah, I have here
Mm-hmm.
from James Joyce,
James Joyce also.
a painful case where the title is a painful case.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is told in a third person limited
Yes.
point of view. View. Eh, it is said here that he turned back the way he had come, the rhythm of the engine pounding in his ears. He began to doubt the reality of what memory told him. He halted under the tree and allowed the rhythm to die away. He could not feel her near him
Mm-hmm.
in the darkest, nor her voice touch his ear. He waited for some minutes listening. He
Mm-hmm.
could hear nothing. The night was perfectly silent. He listened again. Perfectly silent. He felt that he was alone.
Okay. Wow, okay. So that's from James Joyce. Another example is also from Virginia Woolf, right? William Faulkner also they use this technique. So thank you. Thank you for your sharing. So next we have, okay, parallel and frame structure. So for this, rely heavily on the role of the narrators to convey layers of meaning. So for parallel structure refers to two distinctly different yet closely related storylines that occur simultaneously. I can't recall the title of the book, but I've read a book where one chapter is from one storyline, and then second chapter is a different perspective of a different character, and yeah, they occur simultaneously. So I consider that parallel structure. Another is frame and embedded narratives that consist of many smaller stories within the context or frame of a larger story. Usually, this is common in, you know, science fiction, right? Fantasy as well. So each of the narratives within the frame can usually stand individually, but it has more meaning when analyzed alongside of the larger story. And the novel of unconnected narratives is older than you might think. Writers have always been accurately aware that similar experiences might be brought into comparison without the mechanism of a traditional plot. And right, why not put the life, right, somebody lived in 1941 next to to an unconnected life in the 1990s and call it a novel, right? So more of a whole than simply volume of short stories, more expressive of the separation and the whole breadth of society, for instance, and history. okay, than a traditional novel that can be, you know, just circular or chronological order. So, what makes a novel, for instance? The word comes from, of course, the Latin word novus, right, meaning new. So it's new. Okay, and the very definition suggests something original or unfamiliar. So usually, they follow these parallel and frame structures. Examples are, okay, we have a sport and pastime, right? In Salter's surreal novel about Yale dropout Philip Dean and his affair with 18-year-old a French woman Anne Marie. So the narrator's here, he was imagining of the affair that runs parallel to the affair itself. Okay, so an acquaintance of Dean's, for instance, and implicitly a version of him. So the narrator, Jay, no, the narrator in the story knows things, right, that he cannot know, and including, you know, explicitly how the lovers make love. Uh, yeah, it emphasizes that. Okay, so another is the joke, right? It's a novel, Czechoslovakia Today by Milan. Okay, so in this case, after playing a minor joke on a fellow student, young Ludwig is expelled from the Communist Party and drafted into a branch of the Czech military. Another example is this book, If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. Okay, so one liner says, you are about to so begin half of the chapters, right, in this novel. The other half would seem to comprise the novel itself, but the latter part of the book, or the latter part of the novel, really didn't, you know, follow logically one from the next. Instead, they read as the series, right, of first chapters from different books. Okay. How about, okay, we have other examples. So, for example, we have the Canterbury Tales, right? Chaucer's Canterbury Tales as a whole follows a group of pilgrims with individual pilgrims' tales told along the way. So you can see that there's small stories, right, hidden in larger story. We also have the Arabian Nights. You had this in your second year lit, right? Okay, we have also the Odyssey, right, by Homer. So if the Iliad is the world's greatest war epic, then the Odyssey is literature's grandest evocation of every man's journey through life. So if the myths, for example, and legends that are retold here, right, it has also captured the energy and poetry of Homer's original in a bold and contemporary idiom. Okay, we have their chat. Sorry. Yeah, it has features like characters, dialogue correct. Yeah, those elements the same. It is a larger scale project and a long narrative work of fiction with a touch of realism compared to a story. Yeah, yeah, correct. That's correct, man. Okay. Mhm. Okay, thank you. Another, okay, narrative framing. So here examples is like what I told you earlier, right? The superhero stories, X-Men Apocalypse, Avengers. So here the narrator, as you can see, right, the narrator often comments prior to and following on from the minor story, relating trustworthiness of the other narrator. Okay, so for example, X-Men, right? Oh, at other times, the framing narrative will simply be present in the beginning of the narrative. It sets, right? It sets the scene for the other story or stories. And it also provides a context for reading and interpreting the text. So if you're going to combine, for example, you combine all the short stories inside a larger story, right? They can be connected to each other. And normally this is the flow, right? This is the flow of novels that you have read before. Okay? So another, would like to give example for parallel structure or narrative framing. Anyone? Maybe you've read or watched that. Okay, that there are, you know, series of stories or smaller stories inside one larger story.
Justice League, ma'am.
Yeah.
Lahat dyan, no?
Okay. Yeah. Justice League. What else? I think, yeah, this is also common to, you know, K dramas, right? Like they, you know, the writer really establish each life of each character, whether they're minor characters, right? I think that is also the reason people tend to, to have the second lead syndrome, as they call it, right? Okay, so another, thank you for that. So circular stories conclude where it began, achieved by literal repetition of phrases or syntax from the start, or returning the narrator. So for it brings closure. Technically, it brings closure to a return to the theme and material or literary piece introduced at the beginning, rather than pulling together the remaining remnants of the narrative. So, for example, we have here Romeo and Juliet. Right? So, okay, another example is this. It's simply a prologue, right? From that. Okay. Another is multiple narration. So it interests the reader because of the different voices and different reliability of the narrator. So you have here, for example, three characters, and it's the same action is narrated by different characters with very different perspectives. So, for example, um, yeah, Gun Girl, right? The Stone Cold. What else? Time Traveler's Wife. What else? I'm sorry. We have Another Day and Every Day. They're two separate books, but they refer to two, right, different point of views. The point of view of Rhiannon, the other one, and the other one is the point of view of A. So as you will notice in this case, you will really see that it's not. I mean, we're not satisfied, right? Or you can't be satisfied by just knowing the perspective or the point of view of one character, right? Usually you would like to know how about the other person, right? Or maybe sometimes you're related to your real life, right? Like, is if this is what I'm thinking, is he thinking the same way? You think that way. So we also have here books with multiple first person narrators. We have Wonder, okay, August Pullman. Okay, he was born with a facial difference that up until now it has prevented him from going to a mainstream school because of that physical appearance. We have here Dracula, Gun Girl, at the same time. Okay, so another is Epiphany. So in this case, it's structured around one critical moment of understanding or decision. Okay, and that moment shapes the life of future of the protagonist. So, for example, you've seen for a character, seeing her father again when she was an adult, right? It was an epiphany that changed her whole view of her childhood. And another is an appearance or manifestation, especially of a divine being, usually, right? So, for example, a character is near death, for instance. There will be an epiphany of seeing the light, and then, right, seeing the parents who already died, and they shape, right, or they trigger the character to be alive again. Another is a revealing scene, right, or moment in a story. You can also include an illuminating discovery, right, realization or disclosure. Example is the story of It's Okay, It's Love, or That's Love, right? If you notice here, there's an if this is his young version. Okay, as you can see, this is a different picture. Among you have watched this, Ma'am Lori, you did.
Uh, just the episode one mo.
Ah,
Continue watching it.
yeah. Okay. Because in this case, at first, if you are not that into, like really criticizing, but analyzing a certain plot of a story, you will not. I sorry. I don't want to. Okay. I don't want to spoil you, but I need to tell it. Okay. I need to tell it. So this guy right here. Uh, okay. This one is a psychiatrist, and this is the patient. Okay. He's actually schizophrenic. Yeah, he's schizophrenic. So the tendency is to see this guy without wearing shoes, and he believes that this guy is true. This guy is true in reality in his life. But right in the end, you realize this is his young right version. Okay, so that's an epiphany of his childhood, right? And the girl helped this guy. The girl helped this guy to realize that she's part of the reality and this guy is not part of the reality. So he's being haunted, right? By his past, by his childhood, with a different, different image of a person, but it's actually himself. Okay. So how about you? Any story that you can use as example that shows epiphany or revelation? Yes, Ma'am Ingrid.
When I have a book here, it's entitled "The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared."
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an epiphany story because it's about a 100-year-old Alan Carlson who ends up in a nursing home and then realizes that he's still in good health, he can still do things,
Mm-hmm.
and then one day he just escapes,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's when the story really starts.
Okay, but his mental disposition is.
It's all good, ma'am, but he doesn't have his family surrendered him and offered him to a to go to a nursing home.
Okay. Thank
He's turning 100 and maybe he's having like a I don't know a crisis even if he's already old.
Yeah, yeah. That's part of course psychologically. Thank you, Ma'am Ingrid. Another example. Yeah, that's one. Yes, Ma'am Francesca, you are unmuted. Ma'am, I'd like to share something. Oh, this one. One Day by David Nichols. Okay. Twilight. Okay. Twilight. Yeah. Okay. Transformer. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for your sharing. Okay, next is retrospective narrative. So the question here is how reliable the narration is, right? And how reliable it can be, right? As it can be central to interpreting this structure. So the older character looks back with the benefit of hindsight on his own story or a story in which he has role. So examples are The Great Gatsby, right? To Kill a Mockingbird, Titanic, okay? The last part, right? It's when the story being told that is not happening at the time the narrator is describing it, but the events happened in the past. So retrospective narratives highlight changes in the narrator because of right, and since the events of the story transpired. So we have your Titanic, right, when the old version of her recalls what happened. We also have The Color of Magic, Captive Prince, My Husband, and Other Animals. Okay, so typical narrative structure. Okay, the linear one from exposition, conflict, climax, or yeah, falling action and resolution. Another is the same. Right, in this case, you can be guided by questions like why. So that's the origin. What are we doing? The how. Why are we? Okay, why are we the best? So you may be guided by this. Okay, we have a different list. This is now simplified, I think. I would just like to present both. So these are from two different sources. So earlier we have linear. Still, it's the same linear here, but for this source, it's simplified because he only gave three. Okay, so we have linear, non-linear, and interactive narrative structure. So for linear, again, it's the story generally unfolds in chronological order. So many books and movies and TV shows follow this, especially, you know, books for young learners, right? Because they seem to, I mean, part of the assessment when the teacher asks the child, what happens next? What happened, right, at the beginning? So it's easy to follow. So I will not anymore ask you questions there because you already gave earlier. So for nonlinear, the story unfolds out of sequential order. The story structure is disjointed and disrupted. So we have interactive structure as well. Readers, users make choices that influence the narrative, alternative plots or endings due to the choices. There's a series, I think, or movie, I think, that has interactive structure. Can you help me recall that? That you need to you will
Black Mirror, ma'am.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that one. And
Bandersnatch.
yeah, that you can decide on what will happen next.
Yes.
Or yeah,
Yeah.
that one. Okay, and that's interactive structure by the way. So These are the common, and under these three, we have the common literary devices, right? Earlier flashbacks, parallel narrative, they are considered, sorry, a narrative structure. Okay, they are considered simply narrative structure, but in this case, they are considered common literary devices. Wait, okay. First is foreshadowing. So this is a warning or indication of future events. Usually, it is being it's a common, I think it's a common literary device in many books and many movies nowadays, right? There's a pre-scene, usually using irrational concern. There's an object, right? And by the way, these are some types. So for pre-scene, this is an example. We are in the cockpit of an airplane. The plane hits turbulence and the captain struggles to regain control. It doesn't last long, and everything is soon seemingly fine again. But the reader implicitly understands that this is going to be anything but a trouble-free flight. So if you have encountered stories regarding a plane crash, right, plane accident, so they use pre-scene there. So for using irrational concern, for example, a teenage girl leaves the house for an evening out with her friends. Her mother makes her promise to be back before midnight, and the girl kisses her mother and tells her she worries too much, she'll be fine, she says. But as you continue the story, there were really there's really what an incident that might happen. I think I watched something like this that upon arriving home, okay, upon arriving home, she thought that her parents are still alive, but her parents, encounter a car accident and they died. Okay, so another is narrator statements. So, for example, when Ruth Jones's alarm clock woke her at 7 o'clock that morning, she had no idea that today would be the longest day of her life. Okay, so you may start with that. Another is showing the reader an object, just like what I said. An old man is sitting at his desk looking at his stamp collection. When he opens the drawer for his magnifying glass, his fingers brush against a revolver. He finds the magnifying glass and closes the drawer. So another is prophecy. Okay, when a fortune teller looks into her crystal ball, she closes her eyes and crosses herself. When the protagonist reads her horoscope, it promises a troubled week ahead. When a man goes downstairs for breakfast, he sees that his lucky horseshoe has fallen off the shelf. And then later on in the story, there will be a revelation that relates to that particular prophecy. Okay. Another, yeah, symbolic omens. The first thing Mary saw when she pulled back the curtains was a solitary magpie sitting on the fence. She waited for a second bird to appear, but no magpie came. Another, the leaves fell early that year. Storm clouds and ravens. Usually, right? Ravens or black cat, right? Or symbolic omens. Would you like to give your example? Let's start from the pre-scene. Can you give me one particular story, something you've read or watched that shows this foreshadowing technique? Anyone? It's a pre-scene. Okay. Take time to recall. Maybe you've read so many stories like this or you've watched. Anyone? Hmm. You can't recall one? Or how about for other literary, other techniques for foreshadowing? By the way, you may use these literary devices and techniques sometimes as you start your story. Mhm. Yes, Maki, Sir Maki.
Usually in our, wait lang po.
Hmm. Okay.
Usually po sa mga local telenovelas,
Yeah. Mhm.
there's a picture frame that will break, then something bad will happen.
Yeah, so omen as well, right? So, for example, picture frame, right? Yeah, picture frame of family members, and it will fall, and yeah, there's meaning to that. Okay. I think that's common, right? In Filipino context, Philippine context. You may also use Philippine context, not always inspired by international events. Another, oh, for instance, The House of Us. Have you watched that? I think I mentioned that before, right? The vinyl record, right? That was hidden for years under the refrigerator, the fridge, right? Another, yes, Sir Maki again.
Another's from the Netflix original series, The King.
Mm-hmm. The King, okay, Eternal Monarch, okay.
There's some lines here, no,
Mm-hmm.
on the King's neck. Yun po.
Okay, thank you. So the king. What else? This is a new style, not always using flashback, rather foreshadowing. Okay, anyone? Gracia? Okay, you may type. It's okay.
Mom, I haven't thought of any
Okay.
movies yet.
It's okay, it's okay. Anyone? Jennifer? Ma'am Jennifer?
I don't know if it is part the Final Destination movie po.
Oh, yeah, correct. Yeah, Final Destination movie.
Ay,
It's
sorry, Riz.
usually pre-scene, right? Correct, yeah. What else? Jervy, are you there? Ma'am Laurie? Or how about you? I mean, for your target short story, if you were to use a foreshadowing, what specific technique are you thinking of? Would you like to include a prophecy, an omen? Anyone would like to share? Again, this is just an example, but maybe you'd like to consider that. Ma'am Cassandra? Anyone? Or for example, you're into horoscope. Mm. Ma'am Grizzly? Please unmute. Okay.
I haven't thought of the title, ma'am.
That's okay, but how about the prospect technique of foreshadowing that you like to use?
Just like your example, ma'am, I have read this story, The Pilot is Smiling,
Mm-hmm.
from the book. And it is a story about a passenger.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just read the story, ma'am. Is it okay?
There's no need. You just have to recall if there's a foreshadowing.
Yes, there is, ma'am, the pre-scene.
It's pre-scene. Okay. Would you
Yes,
like
ma'am.
to share with us the pre-scene?
The story is about, ma'am, the seafaring vessel is off a rocky coast. Then there is this passenger is panicking
Mm-hmm.
inside of the vessel, and then uh, um, pumunta po siya, ma'am, dun sa cabin nung parang nagpapaano po ng barko, and then there she saw the pilot is smiling, and then he said that everything is okay. Then he got back, she get back to the other passenger and said that everything is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's correct.
That's all.
Yeah. Thank you. Another is the series again earlier that I showed you, Altamar or High Seas. It's also series. It's mostly about the omen. It started with the it's a bird, right? And then suddenly everything became chaotic because it's about murder. Thank you. How about Ma'am Francesca? You raise your hand, Ma'am Francesca. Ma'am.
Oh, mom.
Yes.
What about mom the Vampire Diaries?
Okay. Oh.
It started with a windy, creepy, dark night. And then there's this couple stuck in the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Is it foreshadowing po ba siya?
If you are referring to a pre-scene, right,
Yes,
that might lead to, chaotic turn of events, we can consider that.
that's it.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, another we have. Okay, so some examples are Insidious, Conjuring, Annabelle, While You Were Sleeping, right? About Time, yeah. The House of Us, Happy Halloween. Okay, yeah, About Time. There are two for the K drama and this one, House of Us, and While You Were Sleeping. So again, flashbacks, an interjected scene that takes the narrative back in time, just like earlier. So it fills in crucial parts of the backstory. So for example, in the game earlier, right, there's a fast pace of events in your story, in your created story. By the way, you forgot to think of a title, right? You forget to think of a title there, so maybe you can give flashback there. But of course, it's simply you know um, a pre activity. So you may still fill in the parts there. So what kind of film techniques are used so that viewers realize a flashback is being employed? Would you like to answer that question? Anyone? Again, what kind of film techniques are used so that viewers realize a flashback is being employed? How will you know that there's already a flashback? Oh, this is a flashback and so on. Right? I mean, a normal way is, right, when someone is already an adult and then he recalls, right, his childhood. Well, that's one. Okay. Or usually when it comes to film techniques, the what is that? The black and white effect, right? Or the sepia, right? The yellowish effect. So, yeah, that will give you an idea that it's flashbacks. At some point, I don't think, I mean, it's very rare now for new films, right? It's very rare now to use the kind of film technique. That's why you really need to pay attention, right? You really need to pay attention if it's still happening at present or it's flashback. Okay, I think mostly for indie films. Another, yeah, parallel narratives, a story that follows several protagonists rather than focusing on one main character. So, for example, okay, we have here, yeah, it creates a strong sense of suspense, can be used to show the individual perspectives of characters in a larger story. For example, we have Game of Thrones, right? And your K dramas again. Another device is epistolary. So when episodes or letters, journals, diaries are used in telling a story. For example, 13 Reasons Why, Perks of Being a Wallflower, right? The Notebook, Sherlock Holmes, right? So in this case, yeah, you use stories, journals to tell the entire story. Who among you are I think planning of using this style or this literary device? Okay, Sir Paulo, is that okay? Would you like to share that?
Yes, ma'am. I'm planning to do this kind of literature, ma'am, because it encouraged me a lot, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, so you would start with what, a diary, okay, when telling story. Again, focus on fiction, right? Okay. Who else? I mean, other examples aside from the ones I've mentioned. Hmm. Anyone?
How
One of
about
the Vampire Diaries.
Yes, yes.
the movie the last words?
Mm-hmm. But
She's she's telling her story before she died.
okay, but is that fiction or maybe that's autobiography?
I
Based
I, yes, it's autobiography. I'm sorry, ma'am.
on, okay, it's okay. Another,
Ma'am,
yes. Are you Lori? Sorry.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Uh, Example of that, ma'am, is the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, from the title itself. So it's really from.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. What else, Sir Keith? You are unmuted. Other stories you've read that use this literary device? Yes, ma'am Ingrid.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid and
One.
Dork Diaries.
Correct, correct. Okay. There are examples. Thank you. Okay. Let's have. Okay, so it can provide unique character perspectives, can reveal important details, can add greater realism to story because it mimics real life. Because again, right, when someone does a journal or writes in her diary, it seems realistic. So you have answered the question. So other examples. Okay, no limit time, 30 reasons why. It's like what I said, the perks of being a wallflower. Okay, Sherlock Holmes and others. So next element is okay, plot is no more than footprints left in the snow after your characters have run by on their way to incredible destinations. Any guess of what our next element is? Or anyone? Okay, it's okay, conflict. So conflict talks about the struggle between two entities, the drama of your story, and it is what engages the readers to grasp onto the story. So it is at the heart of every story, right? It is the struggle, again, just like what I said, between two entities. So what is conflict in literature? Right? It is a literary device as well, characterized by a struggle between two opposing forces. That's why you tend to right to hold on to the story because there's drama, right? There's triggering events. So it provides crucial tension in any story and is used to drive the narrative forward. I remember when I was reading years ago, I was reading The Fault in Our Stars and I can't anymore uh I can't anymore put down my the book. Okay, because I'm holding on to the conflict of the story. And it's often used to reveal a deeper meaning in a narrative while highlighting characters' motivations, values, and weaknesses. So for example, here in John Green's The Fault in Our Stars, Hazel Grace is conflicted with herself, right? As she is dealing with how to live her life and find meaning in it since she is diagnosed with lung cancer. So it revolves around that. Okay, so there are six kinds of conflict: character versus nature and natural forces, okay, character versus society or culture, character versus machine or technology, character versus God or supernatural, by the way, character versus himself or herself. So when writing conflicts of your story, don't add up too many problems. You may focus on one kind of conflict, and because it may confuse, right, or worse, the readers may not be able to absorb what had happened in your story. So just like what Ma'am Maya shared earlier, right? She sometimes she loses her focus, right, in terms of the conflict. Okay. So first is character versus character. It is a conflict that can provide tension in a story. So in literature, it is known as man versus man conflict. Maybe of course you've encountered these kinds when you're in high school, right? Talking about literary pieces in the subject Filipino and English. It involves two characters, of course, struggling against each other. So the conflict can manifest in different ways, from a physical altercation, right, to differences in morals or beliefs. So usually they differ in beliefs. That's why they don't disagree with. I sorry, they disagree with each other. So in this case, those two characters have motivation, opposing most of the time opposing motivations, opposing desires, opposing needs, or opposing beliefs that technically place them in opposition with each other. And this type of literary conflict places characters in a situation where these motivations and beliefs are tested. So while the conflict may be resolved with one character defeating another, usually that's the flow, right? It can also be resolved through persuasion or conversion. And usually that's the end, right? Or resolution of the story when the conflict was resolved between the two characters. So it is an external conflict rather than rather than internal one, meaning that characters face resistance from a force outside themselves. So, three examples of character versus character conflict in literature. It can be found in many literary genres from ancient Greek literature to classic novels like Moby Dick. Here are the three examples. We have Othello, right? In Shakespeare play, Othello is in conflict with his confidant, Iago, right? He believes that Othello is after his wife. So a conflict that only deepens when Othello promotes another man over Iago. Slowly, he begins to take measures to destroy Othello. Okay, another is The Old Man in the Sea, right? In the classic Hemingway tale, the fisherman Santiago is having a streak of bad luck. He's so unlucky that his apprentice, Manolin, is forbidden by his parents to go fishing with Santiago. And although Santiago, right, so okay, although Santiago wants his apprentice to go fishing with him each day, Manolin needs to learn to fish from someone who is more successful. Another example is Robinson Crusoe. Okay, so again, when writing conflicts of your story, don't add up too many problems. Okay, so how are you going to write a character versus character conflict? So first, you have to decide which two characters will be in conflict, right? So for example, earlier in your story, I don't know, can you think of a title so I can refer to your story from time
Yes,
to
ma'am.
time? What? Can you think of the title of your story earlier? Your horror comedy and fantasy story? Sir Paulo, can you lead us? Can you give a title? Anyone?
Wait, ma'am.
It's okay. Ma'am Ingrid, you like to help?
Sorry, ma'am. Ano po yan?
Yeah, can you help us think of a title based on the short story you created earlier
Um,
from
I
our
haven't
game?
I haven't created yet my short story, ma'am.
Yeah, it's okay. No, I'm referring to the story you created earlier, starring Tekla, the settings for in PEP
Oh,
Lagoon and PEP Chapel. So I can refer to that from time to time and check, right, the elements there.
okay.
Anyone who can help, Sir Isaiah?
Hey, ma'am.
Yes, or
I'm
you have
currently
a title in mind since you started the story?
Actually, I'm currently thinking about the
Okay,
proper title.
okay. It's okay. So as you were thinking, let me just refer to that, okay, from time to time. So in your story earlier, we don't know really, right? Who are the two characters in conflict there? You have a lot of, but it's so obvious, right? I think your main character is Tekla because you kill Tekla and then you revive Tekla. So, okay. And yeah, next, decide how your plot will lead these two characters into conflict. So in your case, you killed, right? Well, again, it's not so clear, right? Who are the two characters in conflict earlier. So, you may write a detailed backstory again for each character, just like what I told you earlier, and include factors like family, what they have lost in life, how they have been hurt, and what their most cherished moments, memories are. Because earlier, I don't know if they're, in why why did Tekla go to Maki's house, right? So you need to establish those parts. And this may seem like a lot of detail, right? But that's important, right? For us to establish, the right imagery in the mind of your readers. Okay? And it may not even come up with the story itself. Okay? But these characters' full backgrounds will help you create a richer and more realistic conflict. Okay? So next, decide how your plot will lead these two characters into conflict. So if your characters don't know each other yet, create a scene in which they come together. Right? Because at the beginning, you said that, yeah, right away Tekla, right, went to Maki's house. So what's the background behind that? You may create the scene, right? If they already know each other well, think of how your story can bring the topic of their conflict to the forefront. And maybe, right, one is keeping a secret from the other. So for example, right, and the conflict will begin once the secret is revealed. So maybe the secret is he's a merman. But what's the reason of killing him? Right? So you may focus on those things. So, next is make your conflict matter. If your characters are arguing over what ice cream over the key to PUP gate, for instance, it will be hard for the reader to get invested, right? So, giving the conflict real stakes is what keeps readers interested and also allows you to create greater insight into your characters because they tend to ask questions, right? Simultaneously, like, what happened here? What is the connection of that? Why is he acting like that? Why is he crying in the story? So you can continually escalate the stakes of the conflict throughout the story to create more tension before your final resolution. So sometimes you're surprised that this best friend is actually linked to right the boyfriend of the girl. So you may if you're into romance there. So consider also combining your character versus character conflict with other types of literary conflicts. So for instance, right, other types of external conflict can place your characters in conflict with nature, society, right? Technology or the supernatural. Perhaps you want to include a subplot, right, in which your characters are in conflict with an external force. You may do that. And alternatively, you can also give your characters an internal conflict in which they are struggling with their own beliefs or values. Next, character versus nature. In this case, in a nature conflict, a character is set in opposition to nature. So in this case, this kind of conflict occurs when a character faces resistance from a natural force. So as opposed to a supernatural, this one is really nature. So this can mean the weather, what else? The wilderness, natural disaster, or natural phenomenon. So for example, in Ernest Hemingway, Old Man in the Sea, right? So the main character, Santiago, finally manages to reel in a fish, right? After months and months of bad luck. And he fends off sharks who are trying to steal his prized catch, but eventually they eat the fish, right? Leaving Santiago with only a carcass. There are examples of character versus nature conflict in literature. So, in addition, it's a common theme for a natural disaster to force the characters of a story to look within themselves and consider what internal strengths they have, right, to meet the challenge they face. So usually fire incident, right? What is earthquake, right? Um, what else? Like, is that the movie 2012? Yes, ma'am, Ingrid.
Robinson Crusoe, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, the one the example.
Man versus nature po.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
Because he's the, ay, sorry po.
Yes, continue, continue.
Because he's the only one, the only survivor in a shipwreck, ma'am. And he ends up in an island wherein he's the only person in that island. So, yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
man versus nature po, no?
yeah, correct, correct. Okay. Life of Pi, if you watch it. Okay, so that's one. Thank you, Ma'am Ingrid. So examples, yeah, Lord of the Flies, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit rather 451, Brave New World. So how to use character versus nature conflict. So first, you have to establish the element of nature your character will face. So they may get lost in a forest, wander through the desert, braving the heat, or island, right? Face up with a shark, just like the shallows, or shallow, I think, yeah, with a shark, right? And whatever the case may be, you will need to identify the natural elements before creating this kind of conflict. So second, decide how they will be put into conflict together. So in that case, you may ask a question, will he or she face the element alone? Or would you like to add, right, another a person to help him overcome that? So, or with others, right? So at what point in the plot will the conflict reach its climax? Is it when she will be really when she will have an encounter, a physical and close encounter with the shark? So you may do that. So how much build up will you create leading up to it? So for example, will he or she see the storm coming, or will it catch him or her off guard and unprepared? So you may do that. Okay, next, give your character real stakes. So, what will happen if they lose in this conflict? Death is a very common stake, right? In character versus nature conflict. Is it only your character's life at stake, or are there more lives at stake. So you may ask yourselves those questions. You might want to kill your character or really help him strive and survive that kind of natural phenomenon. Another is develop the personality traits that this conflict will challenge. Okay, so for example, you might ask the question, is he or she stubborn in the face of nature's power, right, at a great cost? Or is he or she typically fearful, right? Or you'd like your character to be strong and to really face the storm, right? With all the remaining resources that he has in his body. So, and this conflict will allow him or her to face and overcome that fear. So you may want like to now build your character in that point of view. So your character's emotional response to the conflict with nature will allow readers to connect to them. Why? Because usually, right, it's relatable, especially if that's a common natural phenomena in our nation, for instance, right? Like fire incident. Next, character versus society. So in this case, okay, it usually talks about rebellion, right? Against family expectations, social norms, governing bodies, and the like. So it is one of the most common themes in literature when one or more characters rebels against the expected behaviors or codified structures of their society. Can you give me an example of a book you've read that includes character versus society conflict, even local, right? Local books or Filipino literary pieces. Mhm. Yes, you are.
Um,
V?
Les Miserables.
Ah,
Is
yeah,
it?
correct. Yeah. Les Miserables, MacArthur. I think that's possible as well. Thank you, Sir Jervy. Okay, so three examples. Okay, so again, many literary works will. Ma'am Ingrid, you like to add?
Sorry ma'am, just the Dekada 70
Yeah,
and Luke Palhati's works po.
correct. The Walhati Bautista's work. Correct,
Yes,
correct.
yes ma'am.
Dekada 70. Yeah, so many literary works will feature more than one type of a conflict. So layering, right? Layering conflicts adds to nuisance to a story, and it is a more realistic way, I think, to depict human beings, right, who are inherently flawed and complex, especially in our society now. Okay, so examples: yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Handmaid's Tale, Romeo and Juliet. Okay, Okay, next. So, how to use character versus society conflict. First, you need to determine the expectations your character will violate. Okay, so what are the particular cultural norms? You may include the norms of the society, values, or behavioral expectations that your character will violate. So, another is explore your character's values. Okay, so why is it that the character chooses to go against the grain? Or what circumstances, if any, would cause them to give up and fall back into what is expected of them? So you may ask yourself these questions, or even if these scenarios, right, do not pop up in your story, you need to have a full understanding of your character's willingness to go against social or behavioral expectations. It's not simply the life, right, of the character that you establish, but also his beliefs, right, and his, stands in life. Next, use your character's conflict to move your plot forward. So in this case, you may escalate the conflict with increasingly high stakes, testing your character's commitment, right, to value that you have identified, and showing the reader the strain they are under. So usually you may use this if you are into what do you call this, like mystery, thriller, right, or investigatory type of theme, for instance. Okay, so this a kind of tension is what keeps the plot moving forward and keeps the reader interested in what will happen next. So next, layer on another type of conflict. You may do that as well. So depending on your story, you may want to combine the character versus society, right, with an internal, for example, man versus man conflict, right? Because if he's against the society's norms, but he's battling also with his moral standards, right? You can do that. And these two pair of kinds of conflicts, they work well together. And the character struggling against society, right, will likely also be undergoing an internal turmoil. Sometimes that may lead to, psychological turn around, right, on the disposition, mental disposition of your character. Anyone? Well, you have given me examples for this. Okay. Another. Okay, character versus technology. Maybe you'd like to. Okay, however, I mean, across all kinds, you really need to conduct at least research. So at least you can give more vivid description, right? Even jargons to use, the right jargons to use depending on your conflict style. So in this case, a character is in conflict with some kind of technology. So think of the tale of, for instance, John Henry, right? The African American folk hero. So it's in American folklore, and Henry was a former slave who worked as a steel driver on the rail line. So to prove his superiority over new technology, he raced a steam powered rock drilling machine and he won. Okay, and however, he suffered a heart attack after winning the race. So, in this kind of conflict, it is the hallmark of science fiction, which explores the problems that arise when technology grows beyond its intended use. So, there are many Netflix films now, right, that focuses on character versus technology conflict. But for the books, we have your examples are Frankenstein, The Giver, 2001. What else? Back to the Future. Have you seen that? Back to the Future. Anyone? Hmm. Yes, Ma'am Ingrid. Your example.
It's an anime, ma'am, pero it's also a manga. Psychopass.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the idea centers, uh, the whole story centers
Mm-hmm.
in the idea of, in order to achieve true equality and communism in a society, one or a human or a person with emotions cannot govern a certain society. It
Mm-hmm.
should be AI or
Okay.
artificial intelligence na po.
Okay. So maybe we can say that that's a layer of two kinds of conflict: society and technology.
Okay. Yes po.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Another example of stories you've read or movies you've watched regarding this.
Mm.
The Terminator, ma'am.
Okay, that's one. Another.
Um, the the social media movie
Okay. Yeah.
by Jesse Eisenberg,
Mm-hmm.
which tells about the story of Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. One.
Yeah.
Ma'am,
Okay.
Mm. Correct. Correct. What else? Hmm. I think the circle is that the circle. Featuring I think it's Emma Watson in that film. Okay. What else? There's one for teens and Netflix. What's the title?
ang Geostorm.
Okay. There's one more. Okay. Thank you. Next, we have how to develop character versus technology conflict. So, first, you may outline the premise of the technology that will drive the conflict. So, how are you going to do this? You may ask the question, what purpose is it designed for initially? Right? Are you for, you know, one gadget, for instance, that can change, a certain pattern of life, for instance, certain habits. So how does it fit into the lives of your characters? You may ask your question. You may ask yourself that question. And how does it turn bad? And will humans be able to regain control, right, using that technology? So you may. I remember it's one. See You Yesterday. I think that's one. It's about uh, time traveling like that. Also research, you have to research because again it's about technology, so you might want to use a specific jargons, right? You might want to use specific jargons to use, especially when describing your artificial intelligence. Once you also determine what kind of technology, right, will cause the conflict in your story, you may educate yourself about the technology of that nature that currently exists. So another, build the world, for instance. Does your conflict occur in seemingly normal world, or is it really from your own world, or the world already technological dystopia? So another, you may ask existential questions, right? Conflict with technology often forces humans to examine what it means to be human, right? So what face it, what sorry, yeah, the human consciousness, right, and life that cannot be replaced by technology. So you may highlight the role of technology as curse or blessing, so boon and bane. So maybe at first it's the bane and then suddenly it became a blessing. Okay, so next is character versus supernatural or God. So in this case, it occurs when a character faces resistance from a supernatural force, such as fate, magical forces, right, otherworldly beings, religion, or deities. Okay, so examples are, okay, we have Harry Potter series, Moby Dick, Slaughterhouse 5. Okay, so here we have three tips for you if you'd like to write a character, right, versus natural conflict in your story. So first, determine if it's internal or external conflict. Okay, why is your character going to clash with a supernatural villain, or yeah, in that case, that's an external conflict. Is your character going to have an internal struggle about their relationship with God, with their faith, okay, or free will? So that's an internal conflict if you are going to pursue that. And you'll need to spend more time exploring your character's inner turmoil, of course. So next is decide if your character has agency. Okay, agency against the story's supernatural force. So a common trope in this kind of conflict is that a character is often, grappling with the fact that their destiny is sealed by fate, right? So if you believe in fate, right, and there is nothing, right, they can do to change it because it's fate, right? So you may ask also, will your character have the power to shape the outcome of the story, or have is the outcome predetermined by that fate? So yeah, you may let the guide you or your story development, and you may use literary devices like foreshadowing. So you may combine now, right, foreshadowing for this kind of conflict. Next is set the rules for the supernatural elements in your story. So are they characters like ghosts, monsters, right, supernaturally charged villains, or are they forces like fate? Yeah, so what are their powers? You may mention what are their powers? What human rules do they abide by? Right? Is it about, transgressing, right, morality, for instance? What is the unique set of rules that govern them? You may use that. So even supernatural forces have to be governed by some presiding rule or principle. There's always like that. So for example, from Neil, he elaborates this concept as well. Okay. How about you? Are you thinking of doing this or using this kind of conflict? Anyone? Character versus a supernatural being. No one? Hmm. Okay. So next we have, okay, character versus self. So character, okay, versus self conflict. It's a type of conflict that takes place inside character's mind. So man versus a self. Right? It's a conflict usually involves the main character's inner struggle with self-doubts. What else? Your moral dilemma. So for example, you've been your character, rather your character's has been keeping a secret, right? And it really deals with, murder, for instance, or your own nature. I mean, your the character's own nature. So although it can be layered with external conflicts such as man versus nature, man versus man versus supernatural, okay, or man versus society. So this kind of conflict is um, at its crux an issue between a character and their own thoughts and actions. So for example, rather we have this, The Old Man and the Sea, Fahrenheit again, and Emma. Okay, so for tips, okay, you may layer different types of conflict. How are you going to do that? Right? So just because your character is fighting a dragon, right, doesn't mean they can also be facing inner conflict. So it's rare, right, that a well-written story will also feature one type of conflict. Just like in real life, right? Characters usually have to deal with multiple conflicts at once. right? So you can use the external conflict as a metaphor, or yeah, a metaphor, or foil to the internal conflict. So yeah, but be cautious. You have to be wary of making things too tidy. Okay, next is externalize what's going on inside the head of your character. So with internal conflict, it can be really easy to get stuck right inside the character's head. So be sure to illustrate the internal conflict with action rather than just telling your reader how your character feels. So next, add backstory. Right, so reveal information about your character's past, right? Maybe in a classic way to develop their internal conflict. So, for example, right, in Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, right? So, flashbacks, you may also use flashbacks, right? Because they may help deepen the protagonist's inner struggle. So, who among you would like to use this kind of conflict? Anyone? Character versus self. Hmm? Yes, you are. Isaiah?
Yes, ma'am. I guess I'm going to use that conflict
Hmm.
and yeah, in my future right.
Okay. Would you like to preempt us, at least spoil us a little about it? Like, is it
I
more the self
since
doubt
uh
or self painful self realization?
so since what since I chosen the title His Eyes Are Watching, I guess than to have this self conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned about that. I think that's your most, I mean, your target, right? Title. His eyes are watching. So,
Watch. Yes,
mm, okay. So, thank you.
I
Thank
guess
you.
it's
For,
so
mhm.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next. So, tips on how you're going to write this. First, again, you may layer different types of conflict, right? So, just because your character is, just like what I said, right, fighting a dragon, in turn, okay, we're done with this. So, next. Yeah. Okay, so I would like you to, sorry, we're not yet done. I have another pause for a while because I lack slides here. So, I will go to the next. There's a continuation. Anyone who'd like to share about the conflict that you are targeting to use, and then you realize now, ma'am, it's really not that easy, right, to think of a story. You really need to also focus on your kind of conflict. Well, you can layer them, right? You can layer your stories, of course. Mamaya, would you like to share?
I realized from listening, mom,
Mm.
that my story is too complex and I have to
Mm.
simplify it because I've made a lot of conflicts.
Yeah, correct. So in that case, yeah, you may layer it, but make sure the you can still grasp yet the attention and the interest of your reader. So thank you for that realization. Another, Sir Maki, Sir Maki, you there? What's your? How about now? How about Ma'am April? Since you mentioned about
Yes.
psychological drama, right? I mean thriller. So what do you think?
Um, wait. I just remember the one that I wrote before,
Hmm.
which I mentioned in my answer. The context is about the character with the ghost, which is under the supernatural mom.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask if will the exorcism is under supernatural too.
Yeah. Correct. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Extra. Ah, you like that? Okay.
Um, it depends, mom,
Wow. So
because the genre I choose, mom, is romance. However, there are subgenres in romance,
mm-hmm.
which are there are romance with suspense, or there are romance that has something to do with murder, or self-reflection, something like that, ma'am. So it will vary. The book that I'm about to write
Okay.
may
So
still change.
yeah, I think yeah. Thank you, Ma'am Lori, for the clapping event. So let's continue. So we had character, setting, plot, and conflict. Now we'll talk about from this from Charles Taylor. Okay, from multiculturalism, we define our identity always in dialogue with, sometimes in struggle against, the things our significant others want to see in us, even after we outgrow some of these others, our parents, for instance, and they disappear from our lives. The conversation with them continues within us as long as we live. So, what do you think is the next my important element that we need to discuss today? You may type in the chat. So this is another important element that you need to focus on. Not only kind of conflict, not only establishing your characters or your setting, but this one is so important as well. Here's a chat. Okay. Dialogue, correct, Maurice. Yeah, we have dialogue here. So I sorry. Okay. So as you notice, right, it is define how the characters talk or speak. In many modern novels, right, not every line of dialogue is qualified, right, with a phrase such as he said or she said, and like in speech, right, we always say that he said or he told her, right, but so for instance, who was that, right, or when, or he's on the phone. Oh, it was a wrong number, right? So, but you were talking for ages like that. So when writing a piece of fiction, you need to decide if you're going to explain who is talking every time a character speaks. So rows of dialogues, they shape and form characters, of course, like the way they use the words, right? Some characters can be seen as poetic depending on the use of words, right? So dialogue also give the reader an insight into what the characters think and feel, definitely, right? So you need the verbal communication there, so to provide also first-hand experience of how the characters behave, to allow the characters to express themselves, of course, to develop the plot and to allow the story to progress, and to allow conflict to occur between characters. So it is a literary technique as well in which writers employ or use two or more characters to be engaged in conversation with one another. That's why it's called dialogue. Okay, and yeah, in literature, it is a conversational passage or a spoken or written exchange of conversation in a group or between two persons directed towards a particular topic or subject. Okay. So types of dialogue, we have inner dialogue and outer dialogue. For inner dialogue, the characters speak to themselves and reveal their personalities. So to use inner dialogue, writers employ literary techniques like stream of consciousness, definitely, or dramatic monologue. So we often find such dialogues in the works of James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and William Faulkner. While for okay, outer dialogue, it is a simple conversation between two characters used in almost all types of fictional work. So the function of dialogue is prevalent in fiction, but this technique, can also be found in poetry, nonfiction, films, and drama. So the dialogue has several purposes, such as advancing the plot, right, of a narrative, and of course revealing the characters that cannot be understood otherwise. That's why even if it's being narrated by a third person, for example, there's an external narrator, right? The tendency is the stream of consciousness of a separate character is different from the one being narrated. So, yeah. Further, it presents an exposition of the background or past events, and it also creates the tone, right, of a narrative. So, usually the reader can easily judge the personality of a certain character depending on how he uses the language, right? So yeah, its usage can also be seen in modern literary works as well, where it colors the personalities of the characters. It also creates conflict, right? Like yeah, highlights the even the mother tongue if they have, right, and moves the storyline forward. So also, right, dialogue makes a literary piece interesting and alive, and it gives enjoyable experience to the readers. But it depends. It can still be considered alive even if the tone is very sad, or the tone is mourning, right? So okay, so example here. If you're using another device or a phone, you may zoom it in. Okay, it is the first part of Everyday by David Levithan. We can see it's from first person point of view. Okay, and it's on the stream of consciousness. It's more of internal dialogue. So I wake up immediately. I have to figure out who I am. It's not just the body. Opening my eyes and discovering whether the skin on my arm is light or dark, whether my hair is long or short, whether I'm fat or thin, boy or girl, scarred or smooth. The body is the easiest thing to adjust to. If you're used to waking up in a new one each morning, it's the life, the context of the body that can be hard to grasp. Every day, I am someone else. I am myself. I know I am myself, but I am also someone else. It has always been like this. So the information is there. I wake up, open my eyes, understand that it is a new morning, a new place. The biography kicks in, a welcome gift from the riot. Sorry, from the not me part of the mind. Today I am Justin. Somehow I know this. My name is Justin. And at the same time, I know that I'm not really Justin. I'm only borrowing his life for a day. I look around and know that this is his room. This is his home. The alarm will go off in 7 minutes. I'm never the same person twice, but I've certainly been this type before. Clothes everywhere, far more video games than books. Sleeps in his boxers, from the taste of his mouth, a smoker, but not so addicted that he needs one as soon as he wakes up. So, in this in this book of David Levitan, it is the perspective of A. Okay, the person whom he loves is we can really say he or she, but he felt A fell in love with Rhiannon, and because the other book Another Day is from Rhiannon's perspective. In this case, it's his perspective. The his journey, like every day his soul is transferring to a different body. It can be female today, then tomorrow male, different bodies, everything. I may ask who knows about this novel. There's also a movie adaptation of this, but for Another Day there's none yet. Anyone who's familiar with this? No one. Okay, so in that case, right, it can what do you think is the conflict here? I think it's obvious, but yeah, let me ask you, what's the conflict? What's the kind of conflict here? Anyone? You may type also in the chat, or you may raise your hand. What do you think is the conflict from this internal dialogue? Mhm. May I ask for a number? Ma'am Mary? Ma'am Mary Grace, give me a number, 1 to 5.
Mm, 5, ma'am.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ma'am Marilyn, what do you think is the kind of conflict here?
Uh, Man versus man.
Okay, right. So, are you referring to a different kind of person, or you're referring to the self?
This self.
Okay, correct. Yeah, man, character versus self. Yeah, correct. Okay. So, next. Okay, this is another form. So, this is now in external. Earlier, it's internal dialogue. Okay, this one is external. That's why you use your quotation marks for direct speech. So, when she is around him, she makes herself small. No, I say, I'm not mad at you at all. I tell her what she wants to hear, but she doesn't trust it. I feed her the right words, but she suspects they're threaded with hooks. This is not my problem. I know that. I am here for one day. So this one again is an internal dialogue, this part. Can you see my cursor? Yes, okay. So at least you can follow. So this one, the first person here, without of course quotation marks, belong to internal dialogue. So let's read the external. Do you still want to get lunch today? She asked. So you may do that. Right. Absolutely, I say. Lunch would be great. No, no big deal, I add. So you really need to emphasize this talking so at least your readers are guided. Okay, next from the fold in our stars. So, in quotation marks, sure, I fear earthly oblivion, but I mean, not to sound like my parents, but I believe humans have souls, and I believe in the conservation of souls. The oblivion fear is something else. Fear that I won't be able to give anything in exchange for my life. If you don't live a life in service of a greater good, you've got to at least die a death in service of a greater good. And I fear that I won't get either life or death that means nothing. So, and then there's a response. Yeah, I just shook my head, and then, what? He asked. So, your obsession with another tip here is uh, you know, do not state too much the obvious of what they are doing when it comes to dialogue. So, for instance, from the two novels that we already had, they just say he asked, right? And what else? I add, for example, because to some they even say that, with the emotion, with how the person said it, right? I think it's not advisable from experienced writers. Okay, so next, okay, from Wuthering Heights. Now he is here. I exclaimed, for heaven's sake, hurry down. Do be quick and stay among the trees till he is fairly in. I must go, Kathy, said Heathcliff, seeking to extricate himself from his companion's arms. I won't stray 5 yards from your window. For 1 hour, he pleaded earnestly. Not for 1 minute, she replied. I must. Linton will be up immediately, persisted the intruder. So here, Miss Bront has employed surprise, opposition, and reversals in this dialogue. Like, will it happen? Or when he says, but if I leave, I'll see you. And she has inserted these expressions in order to develop conflict in the plot. So another. Yeah, Pride and Prejudice. So, oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune. 4 or 5 thousand a year. What a fine thing for our girls. How so? How can it affect them? My dear Mr. Bennet, replied his wife, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of his marrying one of them. My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. She ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. So here, Jane Austen, explores the characters in her novels through dialogue. And likewise, in this conversation, the author unfolds Mrs. Bennet's character as being stupid and worthless. Mr. Bennet makes fun of her wife, and this dialogue sums up their relationship and gives hints about their personalities. Okay, so here, me before you. Okay, so external dialogue. My husband, it's not my husband you'd be working with, it's my son. So she's actually the mom of the male protagonist. Your son? I blinked. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm good at dealing with all sorts of people, and I make a mean cup of tea. I began to blather into the silence. The thought of it being her son had thrown me. I mean, my dad seems to think that's not the greatest reference. But in my experience, there's not much that can't be fixed by a decent cup of tea. There was something, this is again, uh, yeah, stream of consciousness, internal, this is internal. So, sorry, I spluttered. As I realized what I had said, I'm not suggesting the thing, okay, the quadriplegia with your son could be solved by a cup of tea. I should tell you, Miss Clark, that this is not a permanent contract. It would be for a maximum of 6 months. That is why the salary is commensurate. We wanted to attract the right person. So, as you notice, the author even uses ellipses. Ellipsis mostly is not simply pausing, but it's deletion, right? Of, preceding words that are already mentioned or something, right, that needs to be added. So, okay, so you may include that. So, another is the point of view. So, your point of view sets you up well in advance for how you view the events as they unfold. So, we have narration and point of view. So while there are, numerous ways to employ point of view in fiction, It's always good to familiarize yourself with the basics of this literary device. And in writing your short story, your fiction, you must set how to narrate, right, or tell the story of the characters. So you may write them in first person, where one person tells the story, and you'll be using I or we. Yeah, for example, it is the moment when I realized how I actually loved him all this time. Or another example, I can no longer stand how we sit still and do nothing while we keep on eating the hard work that we are giving. Let's stand fight against those tyrants, right? So, or you may also write, right, the point of view of the story in third person, wherein someone else is telling the story. You may refer to most of the characters as he, she, or it, and etc. So he kept on staring, right? Or Rachel like, okay, like she's some kind of trouble, but the difference is actually. So you may do that. So narrating using the first person may seem too personal. That's why most writers tend to use his style, right, for the readers to experience what the character is facing. There are also stories that avoid using only one point of view. So they'll be having two different first person narrators, like, for example, in Stephanie Meyer's Twilight, right, saga or Breaking Dawn, point of view is the eye of the narrative voice through which you tell a story. And when you write a story, you must decide who is telling the story. So, and to whom they are telling it. Okay, is it to the reader? Is it to another character in the story? So, the story could be told by a character who is involved in the story, or from a perspective that sees and knows all the characters but is not one of them. So, the bird's eye view kind of narrator, he sees everything but he's not part of one of them. Okay, so three types of point of view. We have the first person point of view, second person point of view, and third person point of view. How about in your case? Okay, sorry, I think it's already time. So I would like you to browse all these and go to, okay, let me show you. Sorry. Okay, to the assessment I will be assigning, right, after this class. You will see your assessment activities, but let me ask first you a question. Is the Did I ask this earlier, like, is the due date reasonable, teachers? Like, for instance, a 1 week asynchronous to comply all the requirements, is it reasonable, or you need more time? I need to know so I can extend. In this case, yeah, you will be doing all these, right? You will answer the following questions. You will create brainstorming, of course, because it's also in preparation to write your short story. And this one, right? Characters. You also need to start at least outlining your beginning, at least middle, and end of the story. Anyone, you may speak or you may type in the chat if it's reasonable. Or do you like for this to be a 2 week activity? Okay. I saw Mama Maurice. Okay, with the fingers. Okay, I heard that. So it will be, okay, the deadline will be week after next. Okay? So let's take picture, teachers. Turn on your videos. Don't be shy, huh? I need to know. How are you doing? How are you coping with all the activities thrown at you, especially your graduating teachers, okay? So smile. One, two, three.
Welcome to the outside world.
Oh, welcome to the outside. Okay, God bless you all and see you.
Alright, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. God bless po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Thank you, ma'am. Amo